The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. And if you don't stop talking about things that spoil, I'm going to barf all over you.
Chowda!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This week we'll be discussing episode 5 of the second season of The Last of Us. Title of the episode is Feel Her Love. Feel her love.
It's like a Tiffany song.
Is it a Tiffany song?
Or like a Debbie Gibson song or something.
It's very Debbie Gibson, yes.
Yeah, like
yes.
Robin Sparkles, let's go to the mall.
It's a good idea. So before we get into details about the episode, we will discuss the play-by-play of what happened in this episode. We're going to talk the episode description and the writer and director for the episode. But before we even get into that, let's just do a quick rapid fire what we thought of this episode. Quick thoughts. And Steve, you went first last time, so it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
So quick thoughts on episode 5, Feel Her Love. Really good. Lots of different storylines, not storylines, but different threads to follow. There's so many new people in this episode because until we get to Nora, all the wolves that we see, we don't know any of them. All of the Seraphites, everything's new. And obviously the cold open scene that we got was incredible. It's great because there wasn't a crazy amount of action, but there was some very tense scenes, and some really great character stuff and some great story stuff. I would say this didn't knock my socks off, but this was a really solid, good episode. How about you? What did you think about episode 5?
I thought it was, I'm just going to use the word brutal. Almost every section had a story or an experience that was just brutal, just brutality, violence, and very intense violence. Yes. Whether it's someone recounting a story or us actually watching it happen, as it, right then, it doesn't matter. Just every part of it. And it was amazing. It was incredible. It was, like you said, there were tense moments where, we were kind of joking about it before we started, that, not the plot notwithstanding, because we don't really know what all is going to change and what isn't. I think, both of us, when we're watching it, we're very, very worried about Dina.
Yes. There's some. She's not the only one, but she's been so highly figured in the last couple of episodes because of being on this journey with Ellie. So it is, there's some concern.
There is. Well, and
sure.
not so much for Bella. We're kind of like, yeah, star of the show, you probably are going to come out of this okay, But you think about it too, because Dina has done all of the, the Walking Dead hallmarks of I'm going to die now. She's actually planning a future with Ellie. Right? She's actually thinking about, stuff they're going to do down the road. All of the things that in The Walking Dead, whenever any character said or thought those things, you're just like, oh, you're gonna go. You're gonna get stuck in a revolving door and it's all over for you. It's just, that was just the thing that I think a lot of us are used to seeing, and the fact that she just continually does that, you're just like, shut up, But
Stop
yeah,
talking la 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 la.
yeah, right. It's just like, no, change the subject, But yeah, again, I thought parts of this episode were just incredible, very intense, edge of your seat kind of stuff, and just from a game player's perspective, multiple things again, sequences that they lifted right out of the game. Although this time around, it's like I think the phrase I used was straight out of the game. Sorta, because it's like it's straight out of the game, but there's like something that'll be they changed that I'll go into in a little bit more detail when we get there. But yeah, I really liked this episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah. All right. So let's discuss description of the episode, and we'll get into some of the more details. So that's you, my friend. So
all right. Well, here we go then. This is, again, episode 2.5, and the title of it is Feel Her Love. Just can't feel her love. Yeah. And the description that we have, and actually it's a multiple sentence description this time. Ooh, pretty exciting.
Fancy.
Yes. The description we have is, the WLF makes a dangerous discovery at a great cost. Later, Ellie must decide whether to continue with her plan and risk putting Dina in danger or give up on her quest for justice. And those are things that definitely possibly happened.
I mean, a few more did, but, that's it. As far as they're concerned, that's it. So let's then chat writer and the director, which... seem like names we've seen before.
One of them is
the director. Is this his first episode of the season, or
yes.
I thought the name looked familiar.
Well, it might, but in terms of The Last of Us, this is the first episode of the show he's directed. So. And he's only credited with directing this episode, so he does not come back and direct any more that I'm aware of. Now that it could be that he will, and they just don't want to give it away yet. They kind of keep a lot of the episode details very hush hush. So it's possible, but anyway, if you look at his IMDb page or his Wikipedia page or anything, it only lists this one. But our writer is yet once again that pesky Craig Mazin. So he's now written all 5 of the episodes from this season. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say I'm guessing he is gonna write the whole season. What do you say? You agree?
Yeah, it seems pretty clear.
Yeah.
He's in the driver's seat.
I think so. So we just got to get used to it. And, again, talked about him a ton. You should know who he is and what he's all about. But our director is a guy named Stephen Williams. So right there, he's a cool dude, just with the first name. Although he is a PH'er. So, not as cool as he could be, but he's pretty cool. So, okay. And this guy, I mean, I believe he is Canadian, and he has, worked a ton in television, like starting in like the mid 1990s. And he's directed a ton. He's produced a lot. And just been involved in lots of television shows. He's also directed several movies. In terms of television, though, he directed, I lost track of counting. I would say he directed about 20 episodes of Lost. All like episodes from season 1 all the way through like season 5. So and like we're talking like multiple episodes each season, which, wow, holy crap. And then he also directed episodes of The Americans, of Westworld, and like going way, way back into the 90s, like he directed episodes of Dark Angel, which was the Jessica Alba TV series from the like the right on the turn of the century, the new century, like 2002, I think is when he directed those.
I love that you called it the turn of the century.
Yeah, it's the turn of the century.
You're not wrong. I just most people don't say that.
Oh yeah, and he directed again, just so much stuff. But the one thing that really caught my eye was he directed one episode of The Walking Dead.
Oh,
And
okay. Just
he
one?
did. It was season 6, episode 4, and the title of it is Here's Not Here. And that is the episode with Morgan and Eastman, the cheesemaker.
Shut up.
No, that is the
God,
episode.
that's a pretty maligned episode.
Yeah.
And not because, and we've talked about this at length, but mostly because of where it falls in the schedule.
Right.
That episode happened directly after Glenn falls off the dumpster into the crowd of walkers, and we don't know his fate for at least the week that we had to watch this episode. And and we've talked before about, like, if this was placed in a different timeline, like if we knew the fate of Glenn and then saw this episode, I think a lot of people would feel very differently about this episode. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's funny because I know we were talking. I can't remember if it was on a podcast or just us talking, but we had that conversation about the Cheesemaker episode not that long ago. And then exactly. I'm looking it up, and I'm like, I saw it in Walking Dead, and I'm like, which one? I wonder which one. And then I clicked, found it, and I clicked on the description, and I'm like, holy crap, it's the Cheesemaker episode. so yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, again, the dude, like I said, he's been a pro for like 20 years directing, and he's hundreds of television shows episodes that he's directed. So a lot of chops, and I thought he was great in this one. I thought there was a lot of great stuff in the way he staged stuff, the way he shot stuff, he edited stuff, very suspenseful. So yeah, I thought he was great, and would happily want him to direct more in the future.
Yes.
So that is our writer and our director.
Fantastic. Jumping into the first scene, it was a pretty quick cold open, probably only about like 2 to 3 minutes long, and we get this scene with some high-ranking wolves. And it's Hanrahan, who's the person who welcomed Isaac when he
killed all of
turned
his
against
buddies.
Fedra. When he threw a grenade inside the truck that he had just been inside. So Hanrahan, who apparently is very high up, and Elise or Elsie, I can't remember, Park.
Yes,
I can't remember her first name, but she's also pretty high up there because she was in charge of clearing the hospital.
Well, she's a sergeant. She's, I would say she's not like a high ranking. She's just a veteran member of the Wolves because, she was tasked with that very important mission. But yeah, it's Sergeant Park is who she was.
Yeah. And just a fantastic scene. The way that the actress who played Park, how she played that whole scene, with the cigarette and just the calmness, and she never raised her voice. She never got emotional or excited. She was like shell shocked. And of course we find out at the very end of the scene, the reason she's as shell shocked as she is not so much what happened, which is they discovered that the spores were in the air down in the basement, and the people that went down there to clear the area were infected immediately. Within 5 minutes, they were already like coughing and hacking and showing signs of being infected over the walkie-talkie, and then they sealed everything off so that it would keep everything at bay. But the parting moment as Hanrahan's leaving the office, she gives us the little tidbit that makes it that much more painful, and she says, "I'm sorry about your son," because they were talking about this one soldier named Leon, and they're like, "Oh, you lost Leon too," and we sent Leon first, and he's the best, and we were talking on the walkie, lots to talk about Leon, and then come to find out Leon is her son. So that was you mentioned that you were thinking brutality in this episode, and yeah, it starts off with a bang,
It does, yeah, right. I mean, it just and like you said, the fact that she's very calm when she's
Yes.
recounting what happened.
Almost too calm, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the word that I would use is broken.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
At what she had to do, because, when her son calls up and says, that he couldn't breathe and could barely talk and basically said it was in the air. And then he said, seal us in. And she has to make that decision, and she, again, she did it, and again, it's like a snap decision, but it's like gonna save everybody else. So she did it, and I also like too that like she's like in like a separate room in this hospital by herself when Halloran shows up, and there's all these soldiers standing around outside in like the hallway. And when she walks in, she's like, your men are very loyal to you. I think they think that I'm going to execute you.
Yeah, because the only story she's had up until then was, they sealed everything off. And the soldiers are left down there, presumably to die, clearly. Yeah. But the only story Hanrahan has gotten is that she basically killed soldiers that were underneath her, and she's here for the explanation of everything that happened. So of course she tells the whole thing, the spores and the sealing everything off. But I have a question for you that I don't want answered, if it's going to give anything away, overalls. But we've seen in the past that when, like in Kansas City, when they were like, okay, this is a terrible, terrible thing that's happening, and we don't know how to fix it. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide it down underground, and we're going to hope that nothing happens. And clearly that, literally came back to bite them, with the bloater coming out of the ground and all that other stuff. So I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts on that area remaining sealed off? Because my feeling is like, just because it happened there doesn't mean it's not happening in other places. Maybe after a certain amount of years, the spores do become all, airborne or whatever in the right conditions. So I don't know. Like, I think that they're just sort of like putting a Band-Aid on like a big, huge gaping wound, and it's not going to help. What do you think?
I guess I would. Can you clarify? Are you saying, do I think that there are other areas that are going to have spores, or?
No. I'm saying, do you think it will stay closed? I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Oh. So do you think they're gonna do a good job of keeping it contained, or much like Kansas City, is it gonna come back and bite them in the ass at some
point?
Overalls.
That is a dilly of a pickle question right there. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to take the case of over versus alls on that one. Yeah, so we'll just leave it at that, and that maybe not.
Okay. All right.
I did like too, though, when Halloran says, that I think your men think that I'm going to execute you, and Park responds by going, if I was going to be executed, Isaac would have come here himself. And
that's true.
And then Halloran comes up with well, you know what, there's we think that the scars broke the truce, and so he's dealing with that right now, so that's why I'm here. And she tells the whole story, and like you said, as she's leaving her to kind of grieve, she says, we owe you a debt. You acted quickly and heroically, and basically you're off the, you don't need to worry, there's not going to be any disciplinary action or whatever, because based on the facts, you made the correct decision. And then she kind of throws in, and this is like the punch to the nutsack at the end, is that as she leaves, the last thing she says is, sorry about your son. And that's when we find out that this, the best one she had, that she sent down to take command of that group, was her kid. And she, that was the one she had to literally, seal up. So, and I think too, when we first see it, doesn't Halloran is walking down the corridor, and she walks by like the stairwell, and you can see that they've like welded it shut. and got
They have.
they have it like, I mean, it's not like they just like put a bar across the door. I mean, like they have like made sure that door will never open again, so
yeah, it's welded, there's plate steel.
Yeah.
They've done their work.
Right,
so,
right, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, just what a powerful opening, right? That this woman is recounting this story that's horrible just on the surface, but then when the family element is thrown in, you're just like, oh my God, which is going to kind of come back a little bit in that, here this woman is like risking her son's life to do these things, and Ellie's going to have the same decision with Dina coming up, right? Because remember, Dina's like, you know what, you tell me, do you want me to go back? Do you want me to come with you? I'll do whatever you want. And if I die, it's not your fault. It's on me. She like is totally telling Ellie, if you want me to come with you, I will. And if I get killed, it's not because you told me to come with you. It's because wasn't good enough or whatever. You know what I mean? So don't feel bad. Like that's going to make any difference. But anyway, it's just interesting that they set that up right at the beginning, that someone else had to make that same decision, and it bit them in the buttock.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it just a brutal way to start the episode. For sure. For sure. We get the credits and come back, and when we come back and it sort of like lights up on the, it's Ellie and Dina together for some scenes. It says on the TV it's Seattle, day 2. And I made note of that, and so did you.
Yes, because again, that's like one of the chapter marks in the game where they'll say like there is a Seattle day 1, and you run around and do all this craziness and lots of action because it's a game, and then when you get after a certain cutscene, then it cuts, and then when it comes up, it says Seattle day 2. So yes, definitely straight out of the game, and same font, same white letters on black background, everything. It's a direct lift, which was really cool.
Yeah, it was great. I love we get a couple of scenes with Dina's doing her best. She's listening to the radio and trying to triangulate stuff and figure out where they are. They're giving away a lot of information, and she's taking advantage to figure out where, and she's getting everything, not just because they're looking for, Abby and Nora and the names she recognizes, but she's also plotting out on the map she has where they are patrolling, where they have lookouts, where they have, areas that they have like lights and etc. So she's working real hard at doing that, and Ellie's feeling like a fifth wheel and like, what can I do? Can I help? And she's like, and she's very hesitant, and she's like, great, you think I'm dumb? She's like, you're not dumb, you're just not school oriented. Which tracks, because when we saw Ellie back in Boston, she was not like what you would probably consider a model student. She looked like, she was getting into fights. She was probably not wanting to be in there. She probably wanted to be out doing things and being more active. She's just one of those people that needs to be doing something. She doesn't want to sit at a desk and work on math problems. Whereas Dina was probably a great student. She's very smart, she picks everything up really quickly. So that was a cute little scene where she's trying really, really hard to tell her new love, yeah, you're kind of dumb, but, I would love for you to help. You just I don't think that this is your forte, is triangulating. And so when it becomes clear that, Dina's going to continue on and do her thing and Ellie leaves, she goes and she finds, since they're in like a theater, she finds like a stage area. And she has, previous to this scene, she's found like the lights and flipped them on and turned on the electricity. So she finds this stage that's all well lit. And my reaction to all of that is another pristine guitar. Oh my God, oy vey. I'm like, okay, 1 is fine. 2, I'm starting to sense a pattern here. So is she going to like fall down and like a well somewhere in the middle of town and like break a leg? But oh, look, she fell on another guitar. so she can just sit here and strum away while. Sorry, I'm just. To me, it's a little convenient, and everything looks so clean, almost like it's been a space that's been used, maybe by the wolves, more so than the record shop. The record shop was supposed to be something they sort of fell upon, and this felt more like they were, it could be a place that the wolves use for like recreation, like it didn't have like a layer of dust on it or whatever. What do you think?
Yeah, I you know what? I think you're gonna have to let this go. Yeah, I just, I mean, first of all, I mean, I thought there was a layer of dust everywhere, and I think that again, you're talking about the end of the world, and no one's gonna give a crap about a guitar. And so they're not going to take them. And I know you had mentioned before.
Oh, no.
You had mentioned before, like, well, people would barter them and stuff. But who's going to want to barter for a freaking guitar? I mean,
I'm not questioning the existence. I mean, sure, maybe it's still there or whatever. I'm questioning like most of the picture it right when the turn happens, right? Seattle is a huge metropolis. People were probably hiding out and trying to get away from the infected in lots of different buildings in the town. So it looks like not a single person has walked through there in 20 years. Does that seem plausible? That's the part that gets me, because it's not just the people who live. It's the pre-apocalypse. Nobody knocked anything over. It's the, as people are trying to like scramble together and eke out an existence, nobody made it through there. And a clicker never made it inside. An infected never made it inside at any point. And raiders, did the Seraphites, could they have hidden in there to get away from? I'm just saying, like, I'm just going with probability factors, and for it to still be in, and sure, layer of dust, maybe it hasn't been touched since 2003, but my point is that, like, to me it feels just as we would give Walking Dead some shit for stuff being, we just did when we were talking about Dead City, Jeeps that look, pristine still, shoes that have unworn soles and things like that. Like those little details, they add to the world, and I think I'd feel differently about the scene if she came upon like what looked like maybe there'd been a jam session going on just as the world fell. So like the guitars are kind of scattered about on the stage or whatever, but it literally looked like someone shut the lights off, went home, and then that it stayed there for 20 years. And from a performance, that's all. To me it's too clean and too neat. I'm there can be guitars, there could be drums. It would make sense in a place like that, or in a place like a record shop. I'm not disputing the existence of them. I'm disputing the shape they're in. The whole area is like, it's like hermetically sealed, like it hasn't been touched in 20 years, which feels improbable to me. That's all. So
yeah,
that's what I meant by finding another pristine guitar. Two of them in the city, just like one day after the other.
Yeah, just like
I
said,
at least have made them a week apart or something.
As much as I have to learn to let Maggie's hair go, I think you're just gonna have to let this one go.
As long as she doesn't find any more guitars, I'm fine.
Well, again, it's a big city, and there's lots and lots of buildings, and some of them are going to be like you just said, like the outbreak started and everybody that was at that building went home, and for whatever reason nobody went in there, probably because it's a theater, and what's in there that people would want to loot, what's in there that people are going to want to take or use. And again, there's 100 buildings in the city, and so it really didn't bother me at all, as much as it did for you. I mean, it looked to me like the stage was set up for a show because there were amplifiers and microphones, and they
Yeah,
had the
exactly.
stools all over the place, where the performers would sit. And obviously that was like right when it started, and I'm sure they came in and shut it down and said, everybody go home, there's an emergency, and blah blah blah, and they locked the doors, and that was it. And just in that case, nobody bothered to break into that place. So again, it
Yeah.
did not bother me at all.
Yeah.
And that guitar that she found, it was not nearly as great as the other one in the case. I mean, it was
Okay.
this one was much, you could tell, was much more weathered. It was not in tune at all. And what did she strummed like half of like one line of a song, and then she's like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this. So
Yeah.
so yeah, anyway, just again, it just I understand your concern on it. It just, for me, I was just kind of like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't ruin the episode for me or anything. I just thought it was less that it happened, but that it's happened 2 episodes in a row, and that it was, similar type of like, here's this guitar that just needs a little, just tune it a little and it's fine. That's all. It took me out of the world for a few minutes and then brought me right back in again.
Okay.
So it's fine. So they decide it's time to go because Dina figured out the triangulation, and they're gonna go ahead and head out towards the hospital. They put together a plan based on things that she found, and there's this long warehouse that they're going to have to cut through. And Ellie's plan, which makes sense, is if we start walking now, we'll make it to that place by dark. So that, obviously that means they'll be able to sort of sneak in, sneak past, and not be seen in the dark, which is a fairly decent plan. And as they're walking, they have this really great moment where, Ellie, Ellie's really struggling. She spends most of this episode struggling with, she loves Dina. Dina's the person she's probably closest to in the world other than Joel, and she doesn't want any harm to come to her. And she doesn't want Dina to put herself in harm's way just for her. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to contribute to another person, maybe injuring or dying. So she has another moment of like, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? We should go back. We shouldn't do this at all. And Dina, brings it back around again. And she tells this really great story of when she was younger. And it's again, following the theme of the episode, it's brutal, and the fact that she had to kill this man who killed her mom and her sister. And she sort of puts it all into perspective for Ellie, saying that she, you included the quote where she talks about if she hadn't killed him and how she would have reacted there. And it helps. Ellie's feeling very selfish, and she doesn't want to be. And Dina's explaining to her by telling her this story that all the emotions that Ellie's feeling make sense, and she shouldn't feel guilty for feeling all of these feelings, So I love the quote that you included, though, from Dina's story. It was really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, anyway, it is. I'd like to jump back a little bit if I could, just in that Dina does have a plan, but Dina's the rational one of the two. Ellie's the emotional one, right? And
Right.
Dina kind of points out, she points out where the patrols are next to the hospital, and she said, and there's this space where we could like sneak through, and if you look at the map where the space is, there's this long building, and it's like they don't go and patrol there, and so then they're both like, I wonder why that is, and
Yeah.
and so clearly
I think we figured it out, though.
yeah, and clearly they're like, obviously there's something in there that they just don't want to go in and get it, like infected. Yeah, probably. And so, they're like, Dina's like explaining the whole, like, all the information she has, and Ellie's like, "How do you know all this?" And she's like, "Oh, they just don't shut up on the radios." And she said they talk like they know no one else is listening. And and again, it shows you how smart Dina is, because Dina kind of makes the jump and the idea that the scars are kind of like the Amish. And of course,
Yes.
Ellie's like, "What's the Amish?" And she kind of, she kind of explains, there are these people that live like it's the 1800s, and they don't use technology, they don't use electricity. So clearly, they don't use the radios, and so that's why the wolves are talking without any security at all. Just using people's names, saying exactly where they are, all that stuff. And so Ellie's like, "Great." That gives us an advantage because they're overconfident. And then Dina shoots right back, "Yeah, but what we're doing is very reckless, so it's kind of a wash." And
Yeah,
so,
that's a great line.
yeah, and so then she goes, "So what do you say? What do you want to do?" And that's when Ellie's like, "Well, if we leave now, we'll get there when it's dark." And Dina's like, "Uh-huh." And so then Ellie just kind of looks at her and goes, "Let's go be reckless," right? Because
Yeah.
that's Ellie. And so anyway, you're right. So then as they're walking their way through, they come upon this graffiti on the wall, and it's got a picture of the prophet, and it says the title of the episode, "Feel Her
Yeah.
Love," written on this wall. And then at the base of it are, like, what would you say, like 5 or maybe 6 scar bodies.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
and
about that number.
and like all adults, children, boys, girls, the whole thing. And they're like
Yeah.
getting ripe. I mean, they've been shot and killed and have been left there for a good couple of days, maybe a week. And this is where Dina almost barfs, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I loved was that the wolves, after they had positioned these bodies there, they had added in their own graffiti right above the bodies. Someone had spray painted "Feel this," and they use a bad word. They say "birch." So "Feel this, birch." And
Yeah.
again, it just brutal, right? Just brutality.
Yeah.
Just not only are they killing and in this war, but they're then positioning the dead to send messages and stuff. I mean, it's very, very, like, compassionless.
Yeah. It feels very all out war.
Right?
Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
yeah. There's it looks like, based on what we've seen so far, neither one of these groups is going to give each other any kind of mercy.
no,
Um, I mean, and that's just what we've seen so far. And as the episode moves on, we get more and more evidence of exactly that.
yes, yeah,
I mean, between last episode, we see Isaac torturing. And then in this episode, by the end, we see, the death of one of the wolves
right.
in a pretty brutal way, too.
Well,
So,
and also last week we saw all the wolf bodies at the TV station too.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean,
The after effect of what we saw happen in real time. Yeah.
right, right. So, and it's at that point that Ellie is like so, like, aghast at this, and she kind of, I think Ellie kind of has a little moment of, kind of figuring what exactly they've gotten
Yeah.
themselves into. And
What are we doing
yeah,
here? Why are we
yes,
here? Yeah.
and more importantly, why is Dina here?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so she's, because it's bad enough that there are infected all over the place, and all it takes is one little bite and she's dead anyway. But then you've got these two, clearly homicidal groups that are going to kill anything that moves, that they have to somehow get through.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's at that point that she's like, you should go back. And then
Yeah.
Dina is like, you never asked me about the first person that I killed. And so then she relates that story. Yeah. And would you say she was 8?
Yeah. She said eight
Yeah.
years old. Yeah.
And
Oh, which
oh,
just is just
I
awful.
think back to what you did when you were 8.
I wasn't killing people who tried to like kill my mom and my
who
sister.
who
That's
who
for sure.
did kill your mom and your sister?
Kill your mom and your
Yeah,
sister. Yeah, that's true.
and yeah, and so she's telling the story, and she went outside to play, and while she was outside, this raider, this man, showed up and was basically beating her mom and her sister to death. And I love how she's telling the story, because she's like, All right, well, you already know that how it ends because I don't live in a cabin in Santa Fe anymore, and I don't have a mom or a sister anymore. So you're already are like this.
Yeah, so you skip to the end, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you already are like, this is not going to end well. This is not a happy story.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
No.
so she comes back in, and then she says something like, I got back in there, I startled him, and then she goes, and then when I shot him, he looked more startled.
Yeah.
And then she says that she goes on and talks a little bit after that and talks about how her sister and her mom were dead, and then she wondered, what would have happened if I hadn't snuck out to go play that day. Would he have killed them right in front of me and made me watch? Again,
Uh,
relating to what Ellie went through, right? Bringing it
of
back
course. Yeah.
to Ellie's experience, and then she says something like, you know, whatever Joel did to those people,
Yeah.
he didn't deserve what they did to him.
Right.
And then she adds, and just so you know, if I hadn't killed him, if he had gotten away, I promise you, I would have hunted him down forever. And then she says, forever, like twice, for emphasis, right? And basically, and also, I mean, the look on her face when she says that line is, I
Yeah.
mean, you can see the emotion and the hatred that she
Yeah.
has.
Still right there on the surface for it.
Yeah, and it's a brutal story, right? Yet continuing the theme, brutality,
Yeah.
the theme of this week's
Brutality.
episode. But also,
Brutality via HBO Max.
yes, but what I thought was really cool was that it was kind of like her way of telling, like Ellie, kind of what you had said, that like, you're not being selfish by asking me to go with you on
Right.
this, because like she said, I love Joel too, and I want to get these motherfuckers just as much as you do, because nobody deserved what he got.
Right.
Doesn't matter what
And
he did to them. Nobody deserves that.
yeah. And I like her perspective as well, because she's basically saying like how she would feel, how she felt,
Mhm.
but how she would feel if she hadn't killed him, that the quote you just
Yeah.
said. But the best part about it is that she's relating it based on, this is how I felt and I didn't go through what you did.
Right.
If I had gone through what you did, basically like I would have followed them to the ends of the
Yes.
earth. Like, you have every right to feel the way you're feeling, and I'm right there with you, because I'm just as mad and sad and angry at this whole situation, and these people need to die for what they did.
They need to get it, and then she points out, and if you say you want, and she basically tells her, look, if you want me to go back to the theater, I will. And if you want to go on and
Right.
do this alone, that's fine. But if you want me to come with you, I will totally come with you. And then she literally says, and if I die, it's not your fault,
Because I made the choice.
because it's my
Yeah.
decision. Yeah. And so she's letting Ellie know, don't, like put me in like bubble wrap and be afraid to take me out and so on, because, this is a rough world. And, if I don't make it, I don't make it, but it's not because you said, hey, let's go do this. And so
Yeah.
it was a kind of a positive message for Ellie there, and giving her some reinforcement, but kind of wrapped up in this horrific childhood story.
Yeah. And it's terrible, because it's like, it's this terrible story. It'd be terrible if anybody had to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear it from her perspective, and that she was 8.
Yeah, she's
When
8.
it just adds like about 10 more brutality layers to the
Yes,
story,
yeah.
to hear it to know that she was that young.
Yeah.
Ugh,
And
just
and then I think too, at one point Ellie, asks like, well, how did you end up, in Jackson? And she's like, it doesn't matter. So clearly, you know what? There's more to that story.
Yes.
That Dina is just like, yeah, you know what? That's for later. That's another time. I'm not
Yeah.
ready to talk about that or whatever. So yeah. And I always, when I'm watching, any of these shows that are kind of like The Walking Dead, I'm always kind of thinking back to The Walking Dead. And I go back, like when she said that, my mind goes back to, the questions that the group would always ask people that they meet, and that,
Yeah.
how many people have you killed? And all of those things, kind of like, tell us your story so we get an idea of what kind of a person you are, so
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So she's like, what do you want to do? And she's like, keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. So they do. And they make it to this, sort of middle ground warehouse thing that Dina had pointed out. They're pretty sure it's going to have infected in it, but they're confident that they can, make it through and fight through. And if they can't, they're like, we'll back up and get out of here.
Yeah.
So they
like Dina, they're kind of talking it over before they go in, and Dina's like, very very level-headed about the whole thing, and she's like, it can't be a horde, because the wolves are like right next door with lights and vehicles, and they're making lots of noise, and if it was a horde, they would just come out and try and kill the wolves. You know what I mean? They're attracted to that type of stuff. And she goes, so it's probably just a couple of stray infected, maybe a couple clickers, things that we can handle. And Ellie's like, uh-huh. And so they're ready to go in, and then Dina's like, okay, you know what? The one thing is, we can't shoot unless it's a last resort, because gunfire will bring the wolves over. So she's like, so Ellie, what are we gonna do? And she's like, what do you think, I'm gonna start shooting? And Dina's like, literally every time, yes.
Yeah, she's like, that was hilarious how she had to describe that. Yeah.
But so you're right. So they set up their plan, their strategy is, we're gonna go in there and we're only gonna use our knives, and if we come up with, again, something we can't handle, we're gonna run. Because if we start shooting, we're just going to bring the wolves down on us, and we're going to die one way or the other. So and Ellie's like, okay, that's cool. So they put their pistols away, and they Dina takes out her knife, and Ellie takes out her switchblade, and in they go. And this scene, not in the game at all, but oh my God, was this scene great.
Just fantastic. So they come across, it's worse than just infected. It's stalkers. And when they realize the first one, and Ellie's like, we can do fine. She has a whole plan, because she's like, I was around one before. I just have to act this way and this way, and you go over there and I'll draw it out or whatever. And then they hear more noises, and they flash the light, and it's like, instead of it just being one, there's like 10 of them.
Oh yeah.
And can I just say, when they shine the lights on them, their eyes, like, strangely, like especially the one that they thought was just by itself,
just the solo
when the
one
light hits it, the light hits their eyes, it's almost like deer, so they're like reflected in this weird way, and I'm like, oh my God, it makes them look even stranger.
Yeah. Yeah,
and no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah. So they just run, and of course it sees them, and then it like hides, and of course Dina's like, what the hell is that? And immediately Ellie's like, oh, it's like the one I ran into in the supermarket, and you're right, she's like, well, there's only one of them, and there's two of us, and so its move is it's going to try and flank us, so we'll try and flank it, so we'll split up, and then whichever one of us it moves behind, the other one will come and get behind it and kill it. And so Dina's like, okay, let's go. And then they hear the noise, and then they're like, you're right, there's like 3 or 4 of them in front of them, and both Dina and Ellie are like, time to go, let's get out of here. And then they turn around, and there's like 5 or 6 behind them where they came into that room. So they're now trapped. And that's when, they're like, uh-oh, now guns are out, right? Yeah. And so Ellie is like, she sees there's like an electrical area with like big fuse breakers and stuff, and it's got like a metal cage that, you can close the door, and it's kind of like a little like chain link cage that protects it. And she's like, you go in
Yeah.
there and you lock yourself in however you can, and I will stay out here and distract them. She's like, because I can get bit a lot. And
Yeah.
I think she also point out that, because Dina's like, well, you killed that one in the supermarket, right? And Ellie's like, yeah, but it kind of got me first. And she's like, it bit you? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, why didn't you tell me? She's like, how could I tell you?
Yeah.
So they're kind of having this little argument, right in the middle. It's just like, now's not the time, But anyway, yeah. So they do
Yeah.
that, and again, it is just like I said, I'm not really worried about Ellie. I'm worried about Dina, and when
Yes.
she runs over there and locks herself in. I mean, literally, she barely gets the door closed before one of them is like, bam, right up against
Right
it,
on her.
and
Yeah.
oh. And then, Ellie's out there and they're moving around and she's trying to shoot them and they're distracting her. And then a couple of them tackle her. And clearly, what have we always said about Ellie? She might be immune, but if they rip her to
She can
shreds,
still get torn apart.
yeah,
Exactly.
she's still gonna die, and it doesn't look good for her. And then Dina empties all the bullets in her gun, and so she's basically just sitting there, and they start ripping the chain, the cage apart, and it's like they're like this is it. This is where their story ends, pretty much, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it feels like. And it's the worst part was when they started tearing the roof off.
Oh.
They started tearing the part of the fencing off.
Mm-hmm.
I do reiterate though that it was Dina's idea to use knives, and they obviously have knives. So could she have not gotten some of them through the fence? We've seen that before.
Yeah.
And it always pisses me off when they don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah.
So she could have gotten one or two, maybe not a lot of them, but she could have gotten one of two that were near her, right in the head,
Mm-hmm.
and two less than are trying to tear apart but it doesn't matter because as things are moving really fast too.
Yes.
So I can totally understand you didn't quite think of the strategy of how to deal with how would you deal with clickers and stalkers if you were inside a cage and go. She's in that situation, so I get it. She's not thinking.
Yeah.
And so she's about to, the one is on top and is tearing it open, and Ellie has been knocked down, and she is getting a little bit here and there, and she's been kind of overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, she's trying to get the ones that are on top of her, and then there's gunfire.
Yes.
And they are saved. And my very first thought was that they were going to get saved because I don't know nothing about this storyline, yo.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought was that they were going to get saved by some random wolf,
mm-hmm.
and then get taken in, and they'd have to be interviewed by someone. I imagined them next in some interrogation room answering questions about how they got through and blah blah blah, whatever. So I just assumed it was going to be a wolf, and then surprisingly, it's Jesse.
It is.
And he saved them, and he is not a happy man. He is pissed at them.
Yeah, he is.
So pissed.
He is.
Yeah.
He's not happy that he had to trek all the way out from Jackson to save their butts. Yeah. At one point when they're moving along and she tries to ask him something and he's like, "Am I talking to you right now?" Or he cuts her off, cuts her knees off. Oof. And just says, "Do not talk to me right now, little girl." Yeah. You're right. When you wrote that line and you capitalized pissed, I'm like, yes, that is the way to do that because he was pissed.
Yeah. There's a great moment that you included in your notes too, where she's talking about how we weren't expecting them or whatever, and things were going okay, and he's like, they were, and she's like, yeah, until they weren't.
Until we weren't. Yeah. She's like, we didn't need your help, we were fine, and he's like, really? And then she kind of stops and she's like, until we weren't, sort of like, yeah, you're right. I like too, and I think they talked about it a little bit in the little featurette, but the way that they introduced Jesse, Ellie, like the sound kind of goes out on Ellie. She's kind of hearing
Yeah.
the tinnitus, the ringing, and so the gunshots are kind of muffled, and she can see someone in the shadows is shooting, and of course it's like a big gun. It's like an automatic rifle that's firing. It's not like a pistol. And the stalkers scatter. They run for it because this is a lot of firepower, and they're smart enough to go, oh, that's bad. And so she sees it, and this guy comes striding up and puts his hand down, in true Kyle Reese fashion, and I'm sure said, "Come with me if you want to live." But
Yeah.
and she takes her hand, and it almost, the way it's almost dreamlike in the way that they shoot it, because it's kind of slow motion.
Yes.
The sound is
Yes.
weird and wacky, and you almost get the sense that it's Joel.
Yes.
And I think Craig Mazin talks about that, or Druckmann, or maybe the director talks about that in the little featurette about how we wanted to kind of give that idea that maybe what is this, it can't be Joel, so what's going on, but yeah,
Right.
and so yeah, he does come in and save their butts there, and of course immediately he's like, were you bit? And she's like, no, I'm not bit. And then Dina comes running over. She's not bit. I saw her. She's fine. Don't look too closely. So yeah. But yeah. But that whole sequence. I mean, it was just very, very suspenseful and intense and scary.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and just ratcheted up, and like you said, Dina kind of is not super rational when she's in that little cage and they're ripping it open and getting to her, but she's reacting to it of like, oh crap, I'm gonna die.
Yes.
And I think she kind of gets to that place when there's a shot where she fires the last shot she has, and the bolt pops out of the automatic pistol, which tells you that the clip's empty, and
Right.
and she looks at it, and that look on her face, and she's like, I'm done, because she's out of bullets. What am I gonna do? I'm done. And
Right.
so yeah, again, it was a showstopper scene. It was just crazy, intense, and I thought extremely well done, extremely well
Yeah.
done. So
And it's great because they're on the run, because clearly their gunfire has attracted the attention of the wolves.
the wolves, yeah,
Because they're like, we're not firing. Are you firing? I'm not
yeah,
firing. Are you firing? Well, the Seraphites don't fire anything, so that's somebody else. So let's go get them.
mm-hmm.
So they're being pursued, and they come up to this like woodsy area.
It's a park of some
and
kind.
and they run in to sort of hide out, or lose the people that are following them. And then when they get a little bit of the ways in, and you can hear the wolves stop at the edge, and they're like, we can't go
Yeah,
in
we
there.
don't go in there.
We don't go in there. So they don't.
Yeah.
And so they continue moving along, and they can how do they come, I can't remember, how do they come upon the Seraphites there? Do they follow noise, or do they just happen upon the site where the Seraphites are?
Yeah, they
I can't remember.
they're like you said, they overhear the wolves saying they're not going to come in, but the wolves they say something like, they post a couple guys by that entrance, and they say if they come out, shoot them. So they can't go
Right.
back out the way they came in. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you picked up on this, but if you looked just a little bit to the left of Jesse and Dina, you could see Maggie and all of her people in the park hiding too, which is a weird crossover, I thought. Um,
Yes.
no, it's a totally other side of the country. But yeah, but it's interesting
Yes.
that both episodes this week end up with our heroes in a park. But and so basically they're like, okay, they're not coming in, and again, this is Dina and Jesse being the rational thinkers, like, why do we think that is? and they're like, clearly their the conclusion is there must be infected in the park. And so that's why the wolves have learned, you just don't go in there because it's so overgrown. You can't see them. They're going to get you, that kind of thing. And so they're like, we don't have any choice. Let's go. We'll find another way out. And they start moving deeper into the park. And then literally they like come upon the wolves with their torches. and they it's almost like a ceremony, maybe, like it's very organized, because they've got this wolf soldier guy, indescript soldier number 2, and they literally they string him up around his neck, and they like give him like a bucket that he can just barely reach with his tippy toes, so he's not like technically choking, but he's pretty close. And the Seraphite, whoever that leader was, that guy was great, creepy great, right?
Oh God, so
wonderful
good, yeah.
performance. And he picks up this sickle. I think that's what you would call it, right?
Yeah.
One of those curved blades, that it just has like a little handle, and he uses it to like cut the buttons off the dude's shirt, and of course the dude is like, I'll totally join you, and they're like, too late for that, and he's like, well, I'll tell you everything about Isaac's plans, I can help you, and they're like, we don't need your help, and it's just like the dude's just like, please don't kill me, and literally the guy sticks the sickle like right in his chest and just pulls it down and just slices open his abdomen. And then when he does that, the guy holding the rope pulls the rope up, so he goes up about a foot or two, so he's now hanging, and like all of his guts just gush out onto the ground. I mean, it's gory awesome.
It is. It's gory, but it's you have to see it. You have to see the brutality.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see that this is the lengths they would go to. And like I was saying earlier about how, when we see how the wolves treated the Seraphites, and now you see how they are treating the wolves, I reiterate, these two are not going to show each other any mercy. And he doesn't. He's pleading for his life. I'll help you. I'll give you information. I'll give you anything that you want. And he's like, I don't need anything from you. At all.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh God, it's just, he doesn't. Like, there's nothing that this soldier would say that was going to stop what was about to happen.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. You knew it was going to happen, and you can't help it. It's just, it was gory but good.
Oh yeah,
all at the same time.
And of course, our 3 heroes watch the whole thing, and I mean the look. We get a close up of Ellie, and I mean she like blanches. I mean she is just stunned, gobsmacked at the fact that they just. Not only did they kill this man, but the way that they killed this man, and again, I think for me, when I see that look on her face, clearly she's like, what have I gotten into here? And what have I gotten my friends into? And what, that I've dragged. And again, Jesse says that, he came with Tommy. So
Tommy's someplace else in Seattle.
So Tommy is roaming. They split up, and he said he found the theater, and he found the map, that they made, so that's how he knew where they were, and then he and Tommy split up, and so we don't know where Tommy is or if he's even okay. But again, she's thinking, oh my God, I mean, this is like literally a war zone, but it's like a crusade war zone from like the 1300s, where these people are just hacking each other to death, and how many times so far in the last couple episodes have we heard about there's a truce, there isn't a truce, there's another truce, I broke the truce, you broke the truce, so these two sides are like never going to like make peace.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like it's their hatred, and their it's too emotional, and they're just one side's going to destroy the other, basically. That's how the war's going to end, one way or the other.
An interesting thought when you said the thing about how Ellie like blanched, which is it's true. She definitely had like, how could you not have an intense reaction to what you just saw, disemboweling someone. Ugh. But it's interesting because all of the victims that they have come across in their journey so far have all been, now they did see the guys in the TV studio, mm-hmm. but up until then, the ones that had like faces that they could see, that they could really reflect on, mm-hmm. were all Seraphites, mm-hmm. and they know that they are, low technology. They've really sort of looked like the victims or they've been painted as wholesome, and you see they keep showcasing that there's women in their groups and that there was the child in that first group,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all very like they look so plain and wholesome that it sort of like tricks your brain into thinking like, you know, these soldiers that have like armor and, you know, bulletproof vests and, you know, helmets and automatic rifles and what have you, they seem much more aggressive. And I know we had the scene in the television studio, but everything was moving so quickly. While it was clear that the Seraphites did it, they didn't really have a lot of time to reflect on it. The scene was crazy,
Mm-hmm.
but it was hard. I think it was a little harder to connect that. And this they watched live.
Yeah.
And that you can't help but connect it. And now you really understand, oh, they're just as brutal to each other. And like you were just saying, that nobody's going to give an inch in this fight.
Right.
It's going to be like the Hatfields and McCoys for forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, no end in sight.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And I think, you know, you're right in that, you know, all the victims that they'd come upon until the TV station were all the Seraphites, and they're, you know, all
Yes.
shot and just left in heaps wherever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you sort of have this, I mean, that's awful in its own way. But then when they get to the TV station, and first of all, they find the one soldier and he's got like the 10 arrows sticking out of him. Right, if you remember that.
Yeah.
That was the first sign of, well, you know, the Seraphites, they can do some damage too. And then they come into the TV studio and see all those guys strung up, and, you know,
Yeah.
so you realize that, yeah, both sides, this war is degenerated into, it's, you know, when they catch, you know, they're like in this war, there's no surrendering. You know, you're not taken prisoner by the other side, right? And so, because
Right.
you know they're going to kill you, so that means you're going to fight that much more, you know, brutally. And then when you do come upon the enemy and you capture them, you're going to kill them as violently as you can, because you know that's how they kill your captured guys. And you know what I mean?
Right.
If the roles were reversed, they wouldn't give you any mercy. They'd kill you, you know. So yeah, it is. It's an interesting moment for Ellie, because again, she's just sort of like, you know, this started out as like a simple little revenge mission. You know, we're gonna head out to Seattle. We're gonna, you know, there's like 10 guys there. We're gonna kill Nora. We're gonna leave. You know, no problem. And now she's like, oh my God, what is this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. What have we fallen into here? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, with the director, you know, he probably didn't direct this exact episode, but it just makes me think of, you know, in that moment in the pilot episode of Lost, you know, when Charlie, it looks at the forest and says, "Guys, where are we?
Where
you
are
know,
we? Yeah, yeah.
When you, the biggest thing that was terrible 5 minutes ago was we survived a plane crash, and now it sounds like there's monsters in the woods.
Well,
You're like,
and
okay, forget about that. What's happening now?
And also, don't they like run into like a polar bear or something? And so they're like,
Yeah,
why
eventually,
is a
yeah.
polar bear on like a tropical island? And yeah, you know,
Yeah.
so like, where are we? What the hell's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. But his reaction of where are we is, it just feels very similar to like what they must be going through with like, listen, we're just here to find Abby. If you could point us to Abby, and then we'll let you guys go back to doing your war with each other, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, Abby,
do you know where Abby is?
Abby and 4 of her friends. That's all. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could just get Abby, that'd be great, but I'd prefer to get them all if we could.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure. And could we step on it? Because we really got to get out of here.
Yeah. And now time is of the essence, because obviously the Seraphites must have lookouts that are up in the trees or whatever, and so they start shooting some arrows towards our group, and they hit Dina right in the thigh.
Oh, yeah.
And so, crap, they've got to get the hell out of there. They've been found, they're in the woods, and so they split up. So they like take Dina and go back to the movie theater, and I will draw them away.
Right.
You know, which she does. She gets them to, you know, get off of their tail. And so she goes off into the woods and she's like hidden under, she puts on her hood and she sort of hides into like this little like, burnt out area of a tree, like the hollow of a tree stump. And so once she comes out and is like, okay, well now we got to figure out how the hell to get out of here. She's roaming around a little and she sees a door and realizes, holy shit, I'm right by the hospital.
Right.
And she has that moment, and you see her have the moment where she's like, do I go in or do I go meet up with my friends? And everything that we've been shown from Ellie in this newer timeline has shown that she's reckless, and she is, of course, going to go inside that hospital and try and find, because she knows Nora is in there.
Yeah.
And so she's gonna go try and find her. And she succeeds. She finds her right away. And I think the whole scene of her, I think it's amazing that they allowed Ellie to have her remember me moment, which is so important. And then she has the whole, Nora knows how to defend herself and, splashes some liquid on her to get away. And then there's the chase, and then the chase ends up down in the basement, and, Ellie is unaffected.
Right.
And Nora is dying. And just in that moment, it's just incredible when she realizes, oh, you're her. Ah, what a moment.
Yeah.
What a moment.
Yeah.
And then to realize that, it's true that there's someone out there who's immune. And, when she tells the story of what Joel did, and I was, because again, I don't know how this story plays out, but I was surprised when she told the whole thing, and she was like, I know. So Ellie knows about what Joel did, or she faked it in that moment. But I think, based on the scenes we're going to see for next week, I think she does know and has just been, clearly keeping it to herself, I guess. Like, it's not like we saw them having any big, deep discussions, but yeah. So we get Remember Me, then Oh My God, You Really Exist. And then and not only that, but Nora has the double down moment where she's like, he deserved what he got.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. She knows, she knows she's going to die, and she really like lets her be known. So, just that whole scene. So, and it's great because it's a brutal scene, and it's all lit in red, and it's incredible looking, and the spores are in the air. That's the thing it's like this menacing thing all around them, and then this scene continues. What do you think of that scene? The finding of Nora, the chase, and then the brutal, like, the death scene in the basement.
Yeah, it's the chasing of Nora and the confrontation scene. That's pretty much straight out of the game. I mean, it happens. She goes running off, and I remember you have to run after her, and if you like hesitate for a little bit and she gets away, it's like you die. You have to like restart the game.
Okay.
And like the game will say like, don't let her get away. It's like, oh, okay. So then you
okay.
got to like run after her and everything, and you do follow her into an area of the hospital where there are spores, and she's coughing and affected and so on. But like all the like multicolors and all the weird stuff that's the quarter stuff that's on the walls and stuff, that is straight out of the game. But it's when you experience that, you experience it as Abby, not as Ellie.
Interesting.
Which, yeah, it's very interesting that they did that. Because again, the game kind of jumps back and forth, and you play Ellie for a little while, and then you play Abby for a little while, and with Abby stuff, a lot of it is time jumped back several years. So like after Salt Lake City's happened, and they're with the wolves, but before they go and kill Joel. So it's like, a year ago or 2 years ago or something like that. And again, it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole story, and I don't know how much of it they're going to tell, if any, in this, but it's a lot. But that sequence happens there. But what I thought, first of all, is when she confronts Nora and Nora's like, cleaning the bandages or whatever she's doing in that
Right.
room, and she turns around, and she's, Ellie is kind of doing her, like you said, the remember me moment, and she, at first Nora is like kind of repetitive, and she's saying, like, you shouldn't have had to watch that, that wasn't fair, and we I'm sorry that you had to witness, him getting killed and all that stuff, and she's kind of
Right.
talking that way, and you kind of are like, oh, maybe she feels bad, and then she said, I can
Mm-hmm.
still hear him screaming, Joel. I can still hear his screams,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then she goes, but the bitch got what he deserved, and
Yeah.
you're kind of like,
Oh.
what?
Yeah. But
you
it's
know,
interesting because we didn't know how she felt, really. We know the other girl there was definitely some hesitation. So she was
Mel.
definitely feeling like weird about like what they were doing, drugging Dina and
Hmm.
all of the assault and everything. It just you could tell she was the one out of that group that had the hardest time, the
Yeah,
other girl. But
yeah, yeah.
without knowing, Nora's the one who actually held Ellie down.
Yes, yes, she did,
Ugh.
but it was interesting that she was, and then we she gets chased, and they jump in the elevator cars, and the car, of course, the car drops down to B2, and as soon as Nora sees the B2 sign, she she's like, well, I'm screwed now. But
Right.
Ellie's shooting at her, so she has no choice. She has to go in to the second floor of the basement, right? And so then Ellie,
Right.
finds her, and and like when Ellie first goes in there, and again with all the cordyceps on the walls and everything, and it's all the different colors, the oranges and the greens and the blue. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's fantastic looking, and like you said, you can see like the spores kind of glittering in the flashlight beams,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
was straight out of the game. Whenever you go into an area with spores, you put on your gas mask, and you kind of see them kind of flipping around. That was amazing. And then when Ellie finds the people that are like in like they're growing out of the cordyceps, and they're
Yeah.
breathing out the spores, and one of them, by the way, is Leon.
Yes. Yes, that's clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can read it. It's L Park is written on his shirt, like his military uniform. And
Yep.
in all of that, again, it's just so bizarre. We've never really seen it before. And again, straight out of the game, but the person that actually discovers it in the game is Abby, not Ellie, which is a totally different thing. But then when she finally tracks her down, even at the end when Nora is clearly dying, and she won't give up her friends, but even then she's still basically telling Ellie to go screw herself, and
Yeah.
not a hint of remorse,
No, not at all.
and again, kind of going back to what Dina said, right? Where it's like, look, Dina said, I promise you, I would have hunted that guy down forever if I hadn't killed him then. And Nora is kind of saying, if I hadn't killed Joel or been there when when we killed him that time, I would still want to go kill him now.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it wouldn't change. You're gonna get your revenge, and you're the crazy immune girl, and do you realize that Joel killed the one guy that could have made a cure for everybody? And that's when Ellie's like, yeah, I know, I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just that whole utter lack of remorse on Nora's part, all the way to the bitter end. And then when Ellie picks up the pipe,
Yeah.
again, that pipe, straight out of the game. You find like hand weapons like that, and sometimes they're axes, sometimes they're wrenches, and sometimes they are pipes, and they look just like that. They look like an L, you know. And so
Yeah.
again, a definite Easter egg to all the video game players. And just when she just starts beating, like it looks like Nora's like legs or maybe like abdomen, right? And
Yeah.
she
Which is exactly what they did to Joel.
right, and smashes down on her. Where's Abby? Ah, wham! Where's Abby? I mean, again, it's just the word we're using over and over again. It's just brutal. It's just brutality.
Yeah.
It's just violence for the sake of inflicting pain. For violence sake. I mean, it's crazy. And like I said, those three, like the park, the B2 basement level, the way it looked, and the whole chasing and taking out Nora, all of those things lifted out of the game, but completely out of sequence in the game.
Right.
Like they didn't
Right.
they didn't happen in the game like they did here, one on top of another. But an incredible way to like get the first one out of the way.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, I mean, we do have a really quick sort of like memory scene that happens right after this. But if you take that aside, the whole episode is bookended by finding out about Leon's death,
Mhm.
and he's being closed in there. And then we meet him in the final scene, and he's sort of instrumental in the whole,
Mhm.
that area is very instrumental in how that whole scene goes down, because obviously Nora is dying, etc. But I just think it's an interesting sort of like way that the scene the episode opened that way and sort of closed in that way too.
Yeah.
So we, like I mentioned, we did get this final little moment, and it's like this little memory. Now I'm not sure how I feel if it's is it Ellie having a memory of something that really happened, or is it a flashback, or is it like an imagining, or like a dream or something like that, a dream of what she wishes she could recapture again. I'm not sure. I know that it looks like we're gonna get some flashbacky stuff in the next episode, so my gut says that it's just a small little flashback moment. But I'm not sure. Do you have thoughts, or are you on team overalls?
Overalls. I'm just gonna take the overalls amendment here and not incriminate myself. So
It's a really great, cute little moment. Just waking up in the bed, and and Joel walks in, and just sees her, and it's just it's like the before times. It's the before they hated each other times, or before they were angry at each other. They never hated. They were so angry at each other. And it's the first time this season where you've seen them smile at each other.
Right.
And it's like, after all the brutality we just watched, it was just like scene after scene after scene of all these brutal things, whether it was, physical violence, or, Dina's story, which was just like a story about violence, just the brutality that was sort of jam-packed into this episode, emotional and physical brutality, to have the very last moment be just this sweet little moment between Joel and Ellie, and then boom, the episode's over.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look, it's Joel. Boom.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, kiddo.
Yeah, I liked that.
And the other thing too is that she's still living in the house, right? Because that was like her room in the house that she was in, and
absolutely.
And also, it's like bright sunshine and just very pleasant and calm looking. The whole setting, and yeah, she gets up and she smiles and she's like, hey, and then immediately smash to black, and you're kind of like. Yeah, again, you're not sure. Is this her remembering something? Is this her wishing that she could go back? Is it like a, more of like almost like a dream or a fantasy? Again, in the words of overalls, we'll have to wait and see.
And it's interesting because I almost feel like they shouldn't have shown like the scenes for next week, because I think it mentally makes people immediately think, oh, it's just a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
But it could have been, I think it's a really great sort of button at the end of the episode, because she could be like in a disassociative state after killing Nora, and you know, she could be having this sort of dreamlike moment, because also being sort of in touch with Joel in that moment, while she is literally avenging his death by beating to death someone with a pipe just like he was.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have been more, I don't know, I think it might have had a little more weight to it if you weren't sort of steered toward, it's probably this thing. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that by showing that, you know, scenes for next week right away, you kind of, your emotions are steered into a direction which could just be, you know, they're putting you off track. I don't know. I'm just saying, standing alone, take that stuff away from it. It's just such a like, I don't want to say confusing. It's a you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a jarring moment. It's even though it's sweet and beautiful, it's still kind of jarring because you don't know where it's coming from. You know, is it, like you said, is it a dream? Is it a daydream? Is it a remembrance? We don't know.
Yeah, and also, you know, we don't really get resolution on the scene with Nora, because we don't see her kill her, and she's still trying to torture her to get information when we jump to the Joel scene. So, you know what I mean, we're all kind of going, well, you know, Nora's going to die anyway because she's got the spores and is infected, but we don't really know how that ends because we haven't seen it yet. So yeah, you're right. You're really not sure. Is this just, you know, this is a big thing for Ellie. She's, you know, we've never seen her like viciously torture someone before, right? And so what is her, you know, this is, like you said, is this her mind protecting herself from what she's doing? You know, and so like she, you know, she literally went to her happy place.
Exactly. I mean, and you hear of people who go through traumatic events like that, who do compartmentalize their brain and do things like that to deal with the, you know, the PTSD of it. So it could be that, or it could just be a scene of flashbackness that, you know, that the directors put there. So we'll find out.
We will.
We'll find out. Overalls gang, we'll find out.
That's right. And then I might be able to talk more. We'll see. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe you'll be able to give more info next week. I just wanted to talk just for a hot second about how much I really like the title, because the episode title, because it's obvious in some ways, and it's really nice hidden messages in others. Clearly, the Feel Her Love is, you know, the Seraphites and their prophet, and it's the thing that they say to feel her love. So that's an overall sort of large thing to say.
I saw what you just said there. You said overall.
Oh, I did. I didn't even mean to.
And you also forgot to mention that we're fairly certain, either a Tiffany or a Debbie Gibson title of a song. So
it's possible. Yeah. It's possible. But, oh my goodness. But it's also, you know, I would say that Ellie is in a position right now where she is feeling Dina's love, and the other way around too.
Yep.
Where they are, hopefully they are making non-reckless / informed decisions on what they're doing, and they're not letting their love sort of blind them. But in there were some really great moments where they were, you know, not even speaking with it, you know, back in the movie theater, where they were just sort of smiling at each other. And in that, I was like, oh, feel her love. And it's happening. But it's also the story. She told that story, the terrible, terrible, terrible story, to let Ellie know that she's okay to feel that way, that other people feel that way, that it's okay to want revenge. it's a completely normal emotion, you know. And in that moment, when she says, you know, if you want to go back or whatever, what do you want to do? And she's like, keep going. She says it really kind of silently. And in that moment, is she feeling Dina's love for her, to have given her this story to sort of help out? So I liked that it had these different layers. And it also could be, you know, very sarcastic. Nora felt, you know, Ellie's love for Joel.
Oh, absolutely.
In being beaten like that, knowing that someone would travel across country and try and track them down and find them to be able to, you know, just do what she's doing right now. So it's, you know, in good ways and in bad ways, I felt like it was a great title that sort of could have multiple meanings. And I'm sure there's even more layers that I just didn't even, you know, what about the sergeant's reaction in the beginning, feeling her love for her son?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, there were lots of different layers there that I think that title was, you know, on the surface, the Seraphite thing, but if you look beneath the surface, there were a lot of different ways it could be interpreted. So I just wanted to put that in there in my notes and include it in chat about it, as it were.
Yeah.
Is there, we've kind of come to the end of our notes. Is there anything that we sort of jumped over or we didn't talk about fully that you'd like to make sure that we have a little discussion about?
It just, you know, in terms of where the game, you know, zigs and the show is zagging.
Sure.
You remember what I before is that Tommy goes off before Ellie and Dina, and so part of their mission is to, you know, get revenge, but also to, you know, as Maria put it, bring my, you know, dumbass husband back to me alive. And so they're kind of looking for Tommy, and they you know, you periodically can read Ellie's journal. That she is, you know, making entries, and like they find like campsites and stuff where that could be Tommy. We don't know. And when they finally get into the city, and they get to the theater, Dina is like so exhausted because she's pregnant and all the heavy lifting they had to do in the subway and all that stuff that she's like, I need to rest. And so Ellie's like, you stay here and monitor the radio and, you know, do all of your map stuff. I'm going to go out and see if I can scout around and maybe find Tommy, and also maybe, you know, find out where all the people we want to kill are. So a lot of what happens in the game is just Ellie by herself. Okay. And and so there's a point there where Ellie, like, you know, she comes upon some wolves and they're like, you know, gonna discover her, and then suddenly they get a call on the radio of like, you know, there's somebody, not a Scar, that is you know, shooting at us. We need reinforcements. And so they all go racing off, and so you as Ellie follow them, and you know, you're the idea is it's Tommy, that they've got Tommy cornered, and they're shooting at him, and so she's going to go to help. And when you get there and you do, you know, start killing the wolves, you're doing the video game stuff and doing that, it turns out that's Jesse, and that's how Jesse joins the group. And you know, he, again, kind of what they say in the show is what happened is that Dina and Ellie have gone, and Tommy, you know, on his own, or not Tommy, sorry, Jesse on his own has come after them because, you know, he loves Dina as much as you know, he thinks that, you know, we'll never get back together, but he does, he loves her, and so he has to go after her. I don't think he knows that she's pregnant, but he just is like, I can't let you two go out there. I'm gonna go. So he goes out there, and so then he meets up, and then the two of you go back to the theater, and you know, there's a reunion with Dina and Jesse, and Ellie kind of is like, well, now I'm the third wheel, and the whole thing about Dina loves her and all that, it's kind of in the game, but not nearly as much, and it's much more ambiguous, and you're really not sure, you know, is Dina like going to be with Ellie forever, or is this just a fling? And you know, is she going to go back with Jesse? And then, of course, when you find out that she's pregnant, you know, certainly my thought is that mean she's going to go back with Jesse because he's the dad? You know, I mean, so anyway, again, in the gameplay, Ellie leaves those two in the theater to kind of work things out, and I'm using air quotes here. And again, you go off and explore on your own. So again, it's a little different than what we're seeing here in the show. But I think the choices that they made for the show are working really, really good. I have no complaints. I'm just pointing out where they kind of have strayed away from the hard storyline, which is definitely different from last season, because the first season they pretty much followed the game storyline, all the way through with minimal like cosmetic changes here or there. But
Right.
I mean, other than that, all of the major beats, the guy and his little brother that turns that they have to put down, right? The cannibal guys that capture her and then Joel has to go rescue, the thing with Monica Lewinsky and the people in Kansas City. I mean, all of those beats happen in the game in one way or another, pretty much the way they were represented on the show. And this time around, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's from the game part 2, but they're changing a lot of the context and like I said, taking a sequence in the game that's with Abby and they're making it with Ellie this time around. So a lot of stuff has changed. But again, I'm enjoying the crap out of this show. I'm not complaining at all.
Right. And like you said, like they did say they were going to veer away from the game in this season and do some things that didn't happen. And, obviously the tease for the game players was, oh, they're probably not going to kill Joel. And then they did it. And so they followed the game. So that's great. So now it's like, now you guys are watching like some of the structure and some of the smaller moments, just sort of slowly, little changes here and there.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And like I said, the game is, it is a big game. There's a lot to it, and this is episode 5, and looking at where we are in the storyline, again, as jumbled as the show is making it, for, kind of picking bits and pieces from it. Mm-hmm. I'm very much now in the camp of the full storyline for the game is going to be season 2 and season 3.
Okay.
So okay. I'm really expecting when we get to the end of this season that we will only be about halfway through what the game storyline is. That's my
storyline for
that's my gut feeling, because there is so much that the game does that I really want to talk about, but I can't.
Okay. All right. Well, great. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our thoughts on the episode itself. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss listener feedback and what's coming up on the podcast.
I know. It's so exciting. So everyone, please stick around. We'll be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man on bed and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned...
Toxic Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from drivethrurpg.com or toxicbag.com.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to jump right into our listener feedback we got for this episode, and then we'll chat a little later on about stuff coming up on the podcast. So first up, feedback. And we received feedback just for this episode. No email from Andy. Sad.
Aww.
I know. So for episode 2.5, for Feel Her Love, Debbie Gibson or Tiffany, depending on your choice of lyrics. Our first piece of feedback.
Or Robin Sparkles. It could be Robin Sparkles. We don't know.
We don't know. And our first piece of feedback came in from our number one listener, Erica Price. Hey, Erica.
Hey, Erica.
She wrote in via the Facebook as per usual, and she says, okay, same lady, Hanrahan, that Isaac was talking to before in the 2018 flashback is not the prophet. Got it. Because I think there was a question about that, whether that was the same person.
Because she kind of looks like the images we've seen, spray painted on the walls. So it's a logical assumption. But they kind of made pretty clear very early that the prophet's dead. So,
yes.
But yes, you're right. They absolutely answered that question here. So yes.
Yeah. She continues and says, choosing to keep the spores on level B2 a secret is a bad idea. Remember what happened when they tried ignoring the bloater in Kansas City? I know. Up to this point, I've been getting the feeling that Ellie and Dina would end up running into one of two parties. They've shown us how each party deals with threats via torture, which makes their escape from capture even more important. They talk about morons broadcasting their every move, yet they stroll down the middle of the street talking very loudly. Hello. Now we see why the wolves gave this long building a wide berth. So many stalkers. OMG, Jesse. How did he find their hideout at the theater? Spores. So cool. This set is absolutely incredible. Nice golf club. She uses air quotes there. Nice golf club, Ellie. Ellie is Joel now. She has chosen her path. She knew what Joel did, and yet she persists on her quest for revenge. But she's now covered in spores. How many Silkwood showers does she need now? Speaking of Joel, swoon! I have a feeling next week we're getting a flashback with, quote, the talk. And since we revisited the torture methods employed by Abby in episode 2, how about a golf pun? Where can you find a golfer on Saturday night? Clubbing!
Oh, my goodness.
Yuck. Great feedback as always, Erica. Thank you so much for writing in, as always. We look forward to hearing from you next week as well. So, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And just a quick game-related thing on the spores. When, they go into an area with spores, they put on their gas mask. As soon as they get out of it, they just take their mask off and they're fine. No one ever makes any mention of, do we have any spores on our clothes? No, it's gone. It's video game magic, people. That's just boop, no problems. And I'm guessing the show is going to do the same thing. So.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. All right. Yeah. So thanks again, Erica. Great points as always.
Absolutely. All right. So moving on, our second piece of feedback came in from Karen, not to be confused with Lauren Cohen. And this also was via the Facebook. And she says, haunted and empty, just like us, which was a line in the Dina Ellie banter that was great. She goes on to say, man, they gave her the best lines. Am I the only one who wanted to yell at the screen, why are you doing any of the things you're doing? That elevator door didn't look, and I'm going to use air quotes, sealed off to me.
Nice.
It's funny that Ellie is that they think Ellie is stupid. You're right. It is. It makes her adorable, and it's what one of the things that Dina loves about her. Mm-hmm. She said so. The basement was pretty cool. Again, I like Dina. I think she's just as important as Ellie in the show. So hopefully that arrow doesn't take her out. Yes, I agree. And that's new. That is not a game development. She does not get shot with an arrow in the game. So we'll have to see what they're doing here. She goes on to say she just needs some rags and alcohol, and boom, good as new. I guess that's it. Cheers. And that is a reference to the game, because as you move around, you find like components to things you can make. And one of them are first aid kits. And if you have alcohol and rags, apparently in the Last of Us universe, you can make a first aid kit. So So that Karen, I think, had indicated she'd played the game before, and so that's, I think, a little game reference. So I got it. I thought it was very funny.
Nice. Thanks for writing in, Karen. It's good to hear from you on time, as usual.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So next week on the podcast, first, before we get into details, as you'll notice in your feed, we've sort of flipped-flopped. We covered Dead City in the previous episode. Just for scheduling purposes, we couldn't do a Tuesday, Wednesday this week, so we had to sort of squish it together, and we covered the shows Dead City on Monday and Last of Us on Tuesday. Next week, we'll go back to the regular schedule. So the next episode that hits the feed will be The Last of Us, and then the Dead City one. So we'll go back to that sort of flip-flop. So just be prepared that you don't have to skip ahead an episode if you aren't watching Dead City. Because it's possible there could be people here who are not watching.
Could be.
Could be.
I think we're almost in that camp.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Pretty near. So episode 6, I know this is going to come as a surprise, but there's no title yet. And
what?
Even more surprising, we didn't even get an episode description. What is that? But they did show scenes for next week. And as we've alluded to a couple of times and in the feedback as well, there's a lot of Joel imagery, and Erica's right. It looks like we are flashing back, and it may be the way Ellie finds out about what Joel did. I'm using air quotes there. So it certainly looks like it shows the, the genesis of their relationship of, this is awesome. We're living in this house. We're safe and blah, 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 all the way up to we can't even speak to each other, and there's looks like there's an emotional moment there where they're both like have tears in their eyes, and then that's like current day kind of feelings. So it certainly looks like we're gonna get like the timeline of all of that. So I love me some Joel, so I'm very excited to have him back in the episode. And I was curious if they would show some flashbacks, so that's very cool.
Yeah, yes, over and alls.
Yeah, you have nothing to add. Okay, great.
I have I have a lot of things I could add. I am just not going to say anything.
So. We will discuss next week then and see how over the alls are.
Yes.
So back, I included that note already. We're back to the schedule. Speaking of schedule, how are we here already? There's only 2 episodes left. Can we discuss how crazy that is for a second?
So I thought there were 8. There's only 7?
There's only 7.
Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, no. That is not acceptable. They need to crank out another episode very quickly.
I mean, I'll look again, but as far as I know, it's only 7.
It's only 7? Okay,
yeah.
It's funny because I thought last week we were just at the halfway point, but we're actually beyond the halfway point.
Oh, we're beyond.
Yeah.
It's not world beyond, but we're beyond.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I'm literally going to IMDb right now and making absolutely sure. Yeah, episode 6. Where am I? Anyway, the thing is that Dead City has 8 episodes this season, so I'm not sure if I thought that maybe they were gonna have 8 and they didn't. No, it's only 7.
Okay, well, 7's what we get.
Very sad. So we get episode 6 next week, and then episode 7 after that, and then it's gone for probably another 2 years.
I would think, yeah. It's gonna be a while.
Yeah, the original series was in season 1 was January and February, and that was 9 episodes. 9 episodes in season 1, and season 2 has 2 less episodes. That makes me sad.
It does.
Yeah. So 2 more episodes, and then we're done, and I'm very sad about that. Anything else?
But you know what'll make you happy?
Nothing. Oh,
No,
we're going to the movies tomorrow.
We're gonna see Fury Road in the movie screen. So
I am very excited about that.
yeah, so that's gonna be amazeballs. So
it is.
You know, I think there's still some tickets left, and I know all the info, like the link and everything, is in the show notes. So again, if you're in the Chicagoland area and you don't mind going to Oak Park, and why wouldn't you? It's a beautiful little suburb. Go to the Lake Theater and see Fury Road. $9 for tickets.
I mean, what a cheap night overall, because it's $9 for the ticket. Their concessions are not crazy like some of the other places. They're just reasonable crazy, not bad crazy.
Yeah.
And to park there, it was really, really reasonable to be able to park. And there's a parking garage that's literally right around the corner from the movie theater. Super easy. So if you're, like you were saying, if you're in the city and feeling so obliged, or someplace in the suburbs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come hang out with us. Come see a great movie.
Oh my God, it's going to be so great. It is. And, you know, Nick DiGilio will be there, and he'll do some trivia, give away some prizes. Sometimes they're gift cards, sometimes they're T-shirts. So, you know, you get a chance to maybe get a little swag if you are up on the movie. But yeah, in any case, it's going to be great. I've been very excited for it. I know you've been super excited for it. So yeah, it's going to be great. So yay.
Yeah. You just reminded me about the trivia, and I'm like, okay, so I need to commit all of the trivia that's on the IMDb page to my memory.
You might need to read up a little bit, that's for sure.
Just remind. I mean, it's most of the stuff I've read through it a million times and probably know those things, but it's just, you know, I got to remind myself so that I don't forget in the moment, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So we're excited to talk about next week's episode. We're excited for the return of Joel, even if it's only in our dreams. And next week we'll be able to tell you all about the time we had at Fury Road. So next week's going to be chock full of some great stuff to talk in the episodes. But we look forward to chatting with you. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, yeah, they just don't work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
I'm sure you know things and can't talk about them. You know, coveralls.
Overalls, yeah.
Okay.
Coveralls. Coveralls is like the advanced safe word.
It is.